So we're going to start on page 3, beginning of this booklet. Parshas Tetzaveh. This Maimer, the Alter Rebbe said, in the year Tovkuf Samach Zayin. So that would be 1807. And that year that the Alter Rebbe said the Maimer was similar to this year, but there were two others. So the Alter Rebbe said this Maimer, Yud Gimel Adar Aleph, the third Erev Purim Katan, which will be this week. This Maimer, or at least the Divrei HaMaschal, the beginning of the Maimer, is famous, as we know, as Chassidim of the Rebbe. We know that the Rebbe, this was the final Maimer the Rebbe gave out, was also a Maimer that begins with the Divrei HaMaschal of Tetzaveh. Some of the points that the Rebbe talks about is Maimer similar to what the Alter Rebbe speaks about here, but the Maimer in general is different. Meaning to say that the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe is focusing on some different things, although there's some crossover between both Maimarim. Before we start the Maimer, I'll give you a little bit of a overview of what the Maimer is going to be talking about. And I just want to point out that if you look at the back of this booklet, that's not always the case, because the person, whoever's putting this out, started doing this. So some of them have it. But in the back of the booklet, he has a synopsis of the different Maimarim that's in the booklet of the Chassidische Parsha. So you can see our Maimer here. So if you don't have, you can cheat. If you don't have time to do the Chassidische Parsha, to get the whole to get the whole thing down, you can kind of look at and see the different inyanim that the Alter Rebbe will talk about in this week. Al Kopanim, but the general idea of the Maimer here is Alter Rebbe is going to talk about the function of Aaron HaKohen and the function of Moshe Rabbeinu. Most of the Maimer is going to be about Aaron HaKohen, what his function is. And at the end of the Maimer, the Alter Rebbe is going to say that in order that Aaron can do his job, so first it begins with Moshe Rabbeinu. And then, because what Moshe Rabbeinu represents and what his function is, then you have the function of Aaron HaKohen. And both the function of Aaron and the function of Moshe is what the Torah is referring to with the opening psukim of this week's parsha. So in the opening of the Alter Rebbe is going to ask some questions, but the answer to the questions is based on the understanding of what the role and the function of each one is. That's the general idea of where we're going. And as I said, most of the Maimer, and especially what we're going to learn today, is going to be the function of Aaron HaKohen. Only towards the end of the Maimer, mamish towards the end of the Maimer, is the Alter Rebbe talks about Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. V'ata tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'yikru elecha. So here we're talking about the commandment of you should command, that Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu that you should command the Yidden to bring you should bring oil. Michutz la'pareches, and what's the point of the oil? The point of the oil is that you should light the menorah with it, which is outside the pareches. Asher al ha'edus, as yarech Aaron. So Aaron is going to set up the menorah. Aaron's going to light the menorah, but Moshe Rabbeinu first. The order of things is first the Yidden will bring to Moshe Rabbeinu the oil, and then Moshe Rabbeinu will give it to Aaron, and Aaron will set up the menorah, fill up the menorah, and light the menorah. So the Alter Rebbe asks, Being that the mitzvah of actually lighting the menorah and setting up the menorah and lighting the menorah is that Aaron should do it. Shuhu yarich hasaneres as la matziv Hashem veyichvei lecha. So why does it first start off with veyichvei lecha that they should bring Moshe Rabbeinu the oil, and then Moshe Rabbeinu will give it to Aaron? Where does Moshe Rabbeinu come into the process here? The mashma sheyaviu Hashem el Moshe, that they should bring the oil to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Alter Rebbe, so here we see in this mitzvah of lighting the menorah, which we're going to explain what that mitzvah is. You have a function which is connected with Moshe Rabbeinu, and that is specifically bringing the oil to Moshe. And then you have the main function of lighting the menorah is Aaron. Aaron lit the menorah. He'd set up the menorah and he lit the menorah. But the Alter Rebbe, as an introduction, is asking why you bring the oil to Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, what's Moshe Rabbeinu's function in the mitzvah? The fact that you have to bring the oil to Moshe Rabbeinu means that Moshe Rabbeinu is instrumental in this mitzvah of lighting the menorah. But again, we're not going to understand Moshe Rabbeinu's role until we understand Aaron's role, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And the second question, the second diuk in the pasuk, is the pasuk Yishin Gabe Vichoi Lechol Moshe Ksiv Lahalis Ner Tamid. Pasuk Sheni Gabe Aaron Ksiv Merev Ad Beker Levad. So now, this is almost an illustration of understanding Moshe Rabbeinu's role and Aaron's role. So the wording is different in the pasuk. By Moshe Rabbeinu, the function of Moshe Rabbeinu, so whatever his function is, which we don't know yet, so that the Torah describes as Tamid. Whatever Moshe Rabbeinu does, that's something that is continuous. Lahalis ner Tamid. There's a continuous role of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that doesn't change. By Aaron, the description of Aaron HaKohen's role is that changes. There's ups and downs. There's Erev and Boker. There's evening and morning. So that function is he rolls with the different ups and downs, the different changes that take place. And that's why when it describes the lighting, they're both talking about the menorah. But within the menorah itself, the function of Moshe is Tamid, the function of Aaron is Erev and Boker. So the main question is, what is the function of Aaron and what is the function of Moshe? So the Alter Rebbe begins with the function of Aaron. Kihine Aaron shushvino de matronisa. The Zohar describes Aaron and Moshe. The Zohar actually tells us their function. You have the Yid and the Eibishter. The Eibishter is the Chassan, and the Knesset Yisrael, the Neshama, is the Kala, is the bride. So what happens by a wedding when you have a Chassan and a Kala? So someone is there to bring the Chassan to the Kala, and someone else is there to bring the Kala to the Chassan. These are two different roles of two different people. So the Zohar describes Moshe Rabbeinu's role as Shushvina, which is the Shushvinin of the Melech, of the king, meaning to say that's the Chassan, that's of the Eibishter. And Aaron HaKohen's role is Shushvina de Matronisa. He is the one who leads the Malka, the queen, the Kala. Okay, that's what the Zohar says. Let's see inside. Kihine Aaron Shushvina de Matronisa. Matronisa, the Alter Rebbe says, is the queen who Mikor Neshamas Yisrael. That's the source of all the Neshamas. Meaning to say, the Matronisa represents all the Neshamas. It's the source of all Neshamas. Ki Kol Yisrael b'nei Malachim. Alter Rebbe doesn't finish off the phrase, but the Rebbe says, the Pashtus, that this is what the Alter Rebbe is referring to. Kol Yisrael b'nei Malachim, all Yidden. It's a saying that we find many times in Chazal, that Yidden are princes princes and princesses. So when we say Matur Nisa, the queen, that's the sword, that represents all neshamis. Va'aren hu ashushvin lahem, and Aaron is their fear, is the one who leads them. So the Alter Rebbe explains it's just like a chasen and kala. They need someone to take them. Why can't they go by themselves? Because they're embarrassed, they're shy. They need support. So too, in order that the neshamis should connect, unite with their source, with the infinite light of Hashem. So they can't do it on their own. That they do it. That what allows them, what helps them along to be able to unite with their source. That's Aaron HaKohen. והנה, כמי עניין השושבינים על דרך משל, שאין זה אלא בשעת החסנה, כי משווה לכן צריכים את השושבינים. Here the Alter Rebbe brings out another point, that when does the shushvinin happen, the shushvinin is not their whole life they need shushvinin. In the mashal, the shushvinin is only during the time of the wedding. So too, Aaron HaKohen is not, there's not a continuous help that's needed. It's only at a special time. Now we're going to describe what that time is. But just like in the mashal, in other words, in the mashal the Alter Rebbe is explaining the nimshal, right? The mashal is of chasen and kala. So there's two aspects in the mashal. The first aspect in the mashal that we see in the nimshal is that they can't do it on their own. So they need help. And the second aspect in the mashal is that it's needed, it's required at certain times. Only and so too in the nimshal, this that Aaron HaKohen is assisting the process of the neshama. That's only at certain times. It's a time of just like the mashal is a chasna. Aaron HaKohen is assisting in a certain time. We'll soon see what that time is, but it's not constant. It's a time of a chasna. So let's see inside. Kim sham ve'elech and sichemed l'shushvinin by the mashal. As kach, so also in the nimshal, hine shushvinus shel Aaron. This shushvinus, this unfearingkeit of Aaron is hu b'chinas b'yem chasunas b'yem simchas libe. So this is the time of a chasana, the time of simcha. When is Aaron? This is when Aaron HaKohen, when his function is required. What is that? V'hu simcha shel mayla hamizgala b'neshamas Yisrael. This is a simcha. When there's a simcha milamayla, that it should be revealed, in order for it to be revealed, this simcha in the neshamis, l'sameach libam b'Hashem hashechem v'teiras, that the neshamis should rejoice in their Torah and Aveda, that they should feel this simcha in their learning Torah and in their serving the Eibishter. So that's the time of just like a chasen is a special time. That's the time of simcha. This is the Yom Simchas Libe. This is the time, in order for that to happen, in order that you should be able, that the neshama should be able to experience it. So Aaron HaKohen is needed. Shetzarech liyes b'simcha. That when a yid does learn Torah and does mitzvahs, it's required that he's b'simcha. How does he feel that simcha? For that, you need Aaron HaKohen. K'meshakasav tachas asher le'avadata b'simcha, b'simcha zu iba yidei Aaron, or b'simcha zu hu shushvin. So in order to feel that simcha, that's where Aaron HaKohen is necessary. What is simcha? Simcha means joy. Joy is when something is revealed. So there's a sense of joy. When something is hidden, so it's frustrating, it's painful. When something is hidden, when it's revealed, so there's a joy. Like the Gemara says, "Ein simcha kataras asfekos." There's no simcha like a simcha when there's no doubt anymore. When there's doubt, it's hidden. But when you've solved the doubt, when it's not hidden anymore, when it's not concealed, then there's joy. Now, in the Maimer, and I just want to point this out, we know in Chassidus, there's a level called Tainug. And it's spoken about in many, many places. Tainug is really the pnimius of the Simcha. Tainug means that there's a sense of satisfaction, elation, that one feels, just in a gashmistic sense. He feels a sense of pleasure, but it's not a pleasure necessarily from something else. It can be from within the pleasure comes. That he feels a sense of tainuk, a sense of satisfaction, and the revelation of that, the expression of that is simcha. So, when we talk about the simcha of mitzvahs, or the simcha of learning Torah, is the expression of the tainug, the revelation of the tainug that the neshama feels when the neshama is learning Torah and doing a mitzvah. Right? He feels that tainug, which the tainug is a tainug eliki. The tainug is a godly tainug, a divine elation, a divine, there is a level of learning Torah and doing a mitzvah which he feels good about himself. That's not what we're talking about. That's a ego-driven sense of satisfaction. When a person learns Torah and he feels good, that he understands and he feels happy with himself. That over here we're talking about a tainug, a sense of elation, of satisfaction. That's a godly tainug, which comes from the Eibishter, that he feels Hashem's tainug when he learns the Torah, and does the mitzvah. In order for a person to be able to experience that, so for that you need Aaron HaKohen. And that's what the Alter Rebbe in the next few paragraphs is going to give us an understanding of this. He interweaves here Tainug and Simcha, but they're interwoven together. But what type of Tainug are we talking about? We're talking about a Tainug of Ein Sof, which is the Tainug of Hashem, which is infinite. So how can a Nivra, the Neshama, who is finite, have this Tainug, have this experience and feeling of elation and simcha within the neshama itself? For that you need Aaron HaKohen. In order to give us an insight in what this Tainug is and what this simcha is, the Alter Rebbe goes on to elaborate. But the bottom line is after the Alter Rebbe explains it, that we're talking about a tainug and a simcha which is Ein Sof, which is infinite, and that infinite tainug that infinite simcha and tainug can only take place as a result of Aaron. Another point I want to mention, which is negeya, but not maybe the Alter Rebbe doesn't he later on it's more he elaborates a little more, but there's the pasuk here, Tachas asher le'avadeta b'simcha. He doesn't bring the end of the pasuk here. He just says the beginning of the pasuk, because what's negea here is the simcha itself in the Avedis Hashem. Tachas asher le'avadita b'simcha, that we see from there, that's the pasuk, the source in the Torah, coming from a negative place, right? Coming from the teichacha, from the rebuke that we get. From there we see the positive aspect, how important simcha is, because we're getting admonished on the fact that we didn't have simcha. But to understand this pasuk, you have 4 levels. So it's important and this is what Chassidus gives the insight. The first simple pshat in the each one, obviously the pasuk is talking about simcha, but the first pshat is what tachas asher lo yavadtas Hashem lekam b'simcha. You didn't have simcha, and where was your simcha? Your simcha was in worldly things, and not, you didn't have you didn't dedicate yourself to what Hashem wants. The Rambam comes along and explains that the pasuk is not telling you about the fact that you were not involved that your simcha was in worldly things and you were not involved in serving Hashem. The Rambam explains that actually the pasuk is admonishing us that we didn't have simcha in serving Hashem. And the Arizal comes along and says more than that not only was this the admonishment that we didn't have simcha in Avodas Hashem, but that the admonishment is that that our simcha was not totally reserved only to Avodas Hashem. In other words, from the Rambam can come out that as long as you have simcha in Avodas Hashem, you can have simcha in other areas also. No, the pasuk, according to what the Arizal is saying, is that the simcha needs to be completely, totally reserved specifically for Avodas Hashem. And comes the Alter Rebbe and says that we're talking about even a much deeper simcha here. We're talking about a simcha that is even more than the highest level of tainug that the neshama can have, which is the tainug in Gan Eden. In other words, the neshama should feel in this world more than the tainug that the neshama can feel, more than the tainug and simcha the neshama can feel in Gan Eden. And that, which is really what the Mishnah is saying, Yof v'shorachas b'tshuva ma'asim tovim b'olam hazeh mikol chai olam haba. That in olam hazeh there's something more and more beautiful and more precious and special, even more than everything that the neshama can experience in olam haba. Gan Eden, olam haba. So to understand what is the simcha, we said the simcha is a tainug, but it's a tainug that is experienced from an experience of the Ein Sof. So the Alter Rebbe explains Kine simcha zu, and for that we require Aaron. Kine simcha zu, imachmas Ein Sof baruch hu mekor hachayim. This simcha comes as a result of the mekor hachayim. Mekor HaChaim, Mekor HaTanugim, HaMelubash HaMitzvos. It's the source of our life. The Eibishter, the Ein Sof, is the source of everything. The source of all Tainug, which is in the mitzvah. Uchemaimer, where do we see that in the mitzvah we've rest? In the mitzvah is there, within the mitzvah, the source of all Tainug. We see it in the bracha that we make before we do the mitzvah. Before we do the mitzvah, we make Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvah Yisav. Asher can mean that. Bless you, Hashem, that commanded us, that sanctified us, and commanded us to do a mitzvah. But Chassidus explains Asher is actually alluding to the Tainug, this unbelievable elation, and that is within the mitzvah that we do, which then translates into the simcha. Asher Hu Lashon Tainug, Gadol Me'ed Ad Lahalal. It's such a great tainug, and to the point of giving praise. Ukamei ba'ashri ki ishruni banis. Like it says, ishruni banis, it says by Asher. Shehu lashin simcha vehilal al reiv tev. This is the joy and praise on the abundance of good. The abundance of good which is within the mitzvah. The mitzvah carries within it the abundance of good. The abundance of tainug, which is within the mitzvah, it's so powerful, it's so intense that it brings to praising Hashem. In order to further elaborate on that, so the Alter Rebbe starts off. Where do we find the first? Where does it we find the Torah? First, the Torah alludes to mitzvahs. So we find by admiration. By admiration, the first place in the Torah, the first time we find anything about doing work or serving Hashem, we find Hashem says, "Vayanicheu began Eden lo'avdu l'shamra." So there's a place called Gan Eden. What's Gan Eden? Gan Eden is a place where where one feels a delight, a sense. We talked about tainug, a sense of delight and pleasure of the Eibishter of Hashem. But how much delight is felt? So you're at different levels. So the Eibishter put Adam Arishan there in Gan Eden in order to work the garden. What do you mean to work the garden? We're not talking about in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense, to bring about more tainug and more tainug, more delight and more delight. There should be more joy within the confinement of Gan Eden. In other words, you have the way Hashem set up the system of Seder Ishtalshalos, where there's a certain amount of tainug, of elation, satisfaction that is felt and joy that is felt as part of that particular level that Hashem placed within the Seder Ishtalshalos. And then you have the increase of that to make that more, to make it even, to increase that tainug. So that is done through the mitzvahs. That's the mitzvahs that Adam Rishon was commanded by Enicheya Began Eden L'Avdu L'Shamra. And that's what Chazal say, that L'Avda refers to mitzvahs essay. Sha'idei mitzvahs hu oisa Gan Eden. That through the mitzvahs he makes Gan Eden. He increases the pleasure there. Dahainu shemamshich beziv hashchina. He brings down through the mitzvah the ziv hashchina, the ray of the shchina of godliness. Lehanis belet tzadikim shemisangim al Hashem Gan Eden. Shu tainug nifla adin kates. That we're talking about ziv hashchina, a ziv of the shchina of godliness, of the divine. A ziv of the divine is infinite. So therefore, this tainug, this pleasure, this elation, this satisfaction, is that the joy that's being felt is infinite. It's on many levels. It continues to go and go and go and go. Just like to say, for example, l'mashal, the mun, right? The mun, you can have infinite amount of tastes. You only know 10 tastes, 20 tastes, 100 tastes. So you have 100 tastes. If there's another taste, then you would have that taste also. There's no limit. Whatever taste there is, that would be the mun delivers that taste. No matter how many different the Gan Eden is infinite level of different tainugim. Shalachein amar al acher, to bring out what is the tainug of Gan Eden. So the Alter Rebbe says that by Acher, it says Mutter de Ledaini. You want to know what the tainug of Gan Eden is? So obviously we're talking about a tainug ruchni, a spiritual tainug, but you can understand a little bit have an inkling. And what that tainug is, by what the Gemara says regarding Acher. Acher wasn't allowed to go into Gehenim even because he learned so much Torah. Rabbi Yochanan davened that he should be able to go into Gehenim. And then you have to go into Gehenim at least for 11 months. There he was, what is Gehenim? Gehenim, it says every moment in Gehenim, or every hour in Gehenim is like 70 years of the Yisurim of Eve, of the pain and the difficulties that Eve went through. So you can imagine how many hours you have in a year that Acher had to go through, and it was all Kedai in order to get to the lowest place of Gan Eden. So you can only imagine how far removed, or how special, how intense is the tainug that is felt in Gan Eden. And another way, the Alter Rebbe, another point that gives us the insight in what is the tainug that is what the tainug of Gan Eden is by Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says regarding Rabbi Akiva, Kshra Krach Gadol Shul Evdi Kechav Mazalis, when Rabbi Akiva saw this big village, this big place that of Goyim that served idols, and then so he laughed. What was he laughing? He laughed because he said, if this is the tainuk, this is the joy that they feel, right? Which of those who don't serve Hashem, so the ones who serve Hashem, how much more so the tainuk is. So Rabbi Akiva saw within the negative, he saw how much greater the tainug is. It gave him an insight in that the tainug must be so much more and so much greater.
Interesting how both proofs are connected with the negative of it.
Yeah.
How much you go through and how...
Right. So So the Alter Rebbe explains this more in detail. This what Rabbi Akiva said. Because the lashon is im lo'over etzonei kach lo'oser etzonei lachas kama v'kama. So you have over etzonei and oser etzonei. Over etzonei means they transgress His will. Oser etzonei means they do His will. So the Alter Rebbe explains im yesh harbe tanugim kol kach b'chinas over etzonei, that if the over etzonei she'em tanug elam haza, why is over etzonei? So over etzonei, the simple understanding is Eiver Etzonei means someone who transgresses the will of the Eibusher, and they have this much enjoyment. So how much more so is the enjoyment of one that does what Hashem wants? But in the word Eiver Etzonei, the Alter Rebbe, the emphasis is not that they transgress. The emphasis here in what the Alter Rebbe says is this is tainug that kind of got hijacked. There's two types of tanugim. There's a tainug that got hijacked, meaning to say that went to a place it shouldn't have gone. Because it says that the Sitra Achra, the klippus, they can receive from two places. Right? You learned in the Kunter Sumayin, the Rabbi Rasha, there's two places that they can receive their nourishment. One place is at the end of the line. Like, you have the like a soup kitchen, so you have maybe the more important people, and then the end of the line you get mamish, the real, the ones that are the least worthy, and they can scrape from the end of whatever is left over, right? You make soup, right, to scrape the leftovers. That's one place. The second place that they can get is from a place where there's such abundance, there's so much that it doesn't matter. And from that perspective, it doesn't matter if you're worthy or not worthy. So they hijacked from that place of where it makes no difference, no distinction whatsoever. Nevertheless, even there you have Pnimius and Chitzonius. and this is what the Rabbi Akiva is saying, if they were able to hijack from there, and this is what it looks like, how much more so by someone who is Eiser Ritzayin that does the will of the Eibishter. Let's see in the words of the Alter Rebbe. Sheyardim neskashim begashim se'elam hazav chumiyusei shaloi kederech hashtalshlus v'yiridas hamadregas merin tzev baruch hu madrega achamadrega kamei madregas dikdusha. It wasn't a progression of one level after the other. Elo shem noflu madregas hayinis dikdusha derech nefila. It fell mi'igarama v'lachei nikroim over itzeinei she'yiviru es haderech. It took a detour. It fell. It fell from such a high place. It fell down. And if from the Eiver Etzeinei that they fell from such a high place, and nevertheless they have such tainug, yesh tainug harbi shnafel b'shviras hakelim, kol shekain lo Eiser Etzeinei. So how much more so those that are engaged in Eiser Etzeinei, that do what the Eibishter wants, that it progresses from level to level in a pneumistic way. So that the tainug is unbelievable. And this tainug is infinite. Which the source of this tainug the source is from the source of life and the source of all tainug. So here in this piece, the Alter Rebbe describes the tainug that is there when in the mitzvahs, when one does Eiser Etzeinei, that does the will of the Eibishter, that tainug is a tainug nifla, it's a tainug ein kates, it's an infinite level of tainug. And then in the next piece, Alter Rebbe is going to explain, and in order to experience that tainug and that simcha, we require iron HaKohen.
Oh yeah, it's great. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.